How's it going, everyone? I hope you're having a wonderful day today. My name is Frank, and in this video I wanted to talk about something that I've been putting off for quite some time. You see, this is a topic that is not really financially related, but I still think it is very relevant to this channel, and it's something that I am personally very interested in. Last year I came across this book called Factfulness: 10 Reasons We're Wrong About the World and Why Things Are Better Than You Think by Rosling. And I thought, okay, the world is kind of going crazy at the moment with COVID, so let's hear some good news for once. And right off the bat, Dr. Rosling introduces us to this concept of the 4 different levels of income around the world. And I thought this was super interesting because it really gave me some more perspective outside of my own little bubble here in the United States. So I thought I would make a video breaking down the 4 different levels of income and how it's really affected my own perspective on things. Admittedly, the title here is a bit of a clickbait because if you're watching this, then congratulations, because you probably belong to the exclusive level 4 along with 1 billion other people. Thing is, how do the other 6 billion on the planet live? Well, let's find out, and you might be a little bit surprised. By the way, before I continue, I will be using some images from Gapminder's website. They are a non-profit that really focuses on supporting a more factual-based worldview so that other institutions and people in general have a better idea of where to direct their money to have the best overall effect. I will be leaving their donation link in the description down below if you guys feel like supporting them. Also, if you wouldn't mind hitting that like button for the YouTube algorithm, I would really appreciate that. Let's get started. Alright, so we're going to get started in the lower levels and then continually make our way up to the higher levels. So, starting off with level 1, to be part of this exclusive group, which is around 1 billion people, you have to be making more or less $1 a day. Here in the US, there are people struggling on $31,000 a year, which is around the median income, and that is $85 a day. So, obviously, it might be very difficult to imagine what a life must look like if you're living on $1 a day. But let's break that down. To start things off, just for you to understand, at this stage there is literally no infrastructure, which means that water doesn't just come to your house, there's no electricity or anything, so what do? Well, to get water, you literally have to walk a distance to some sort of water source with a bucket, fill the bucket, and come back to your house so that you can hopefully have clean drinking water, which most of the time it is not. It's helpful then that people at this stage usually have more than 5 children because you really need a lot of hands to take care of multiple things at once to effectively survive together. So while one person goes and fetches the water for the family, the other people could go and harvest the field, for example. Speaking of harvesting food, that's a serious problem here because on your salary of $1 a day, you do not have enough money to go and buy more food. So you're really dependent on how much you can grow yourself. And consider that feeding a large family is difficult at literally any stage. That is a significant problem. Also remember, like I said, there's no electricity, so you have to be very creative about how to store food because otherwise it'll just go bad. And there's no gas either, so you literally have to use fire pits with firewood to cook your food. In case your harvest was bad, remember, we don't have enough money to just go and buy food. So you better hope that you or your children do not submit to some disease just due to lack of nutrition. Because then, honestly, your best defense is to just hope that your body can fight it off. Because healthcare, not a thing at this point. You have almost no access to healthcare. If not, the closest healthcare facility is a large distance away. And medicine is just not easily accessible for you. Transportation is largely limited to how far you can walk and how fast you can walk. So getting to the nearest healthcare center, which is likely very far away, is possibly not something that you would be able to do. And if someone gets an infection that is spreadable, then it is very likely that everyone has that same infection already and has been contaminated. Because your house only has like 1 room most likely, that everyone shares as a sleeping quarters. So if one person gets it, they all get it. Here are some pictures of what living at a level 1 income level looks like. Pay close attention to clothing and buildings. This will be the most notable change when looking at other levels. Now let's move on to level 2, and at this point your salary has likely increased from $1 to $4 a day. And while that may not sound like a lot of money to you, do consider that going from $1 to $4 is like increasing your salary by 400%, and that is life-changing. This level is also where most people in the world are, so keep this in mind. Currently, there are around 3 billion people living at this stage, and that's a lot more than level 1, which is overall a good thing, but there are still challenges, obviously. For example, healthcare is still a problem, and you're still at the mercy of any kind of disease that could easily knock you back down to level 1. On the bright side, there are some improvements, especially when it comes to transportation, because we can finally afford a bicycle. And that, while it may not sound life-changing, is very life-changing, because imagine instead of having to walk to a water source, you can just pedal there and pedal back. It makes it much more faster, much more efficient, and you waste less energy overall. We also have some electricity, and I say some electricity because it's not very reliable, but it's still electricity. And while it might not be reliable enough to store food in a freezer, for example, it is reliable enough to have maybe some sort of lighting at night, finally, so we're not limited by daylight hours anymore, which is huge. Gas is also a thing, and as you can imagine, it makes things a lot easier because you're no longer restricted to using firewood. Quality of life overall increases tremendously just by having a few more dollars a day at this level. Because think about it, we now have electricity, some electricity, we have gas, we have much better transportation with the bicycle, and we can finally afford a mattress to sleep on instead of just the ground. Here are some pictures of level 2 communities. And like I said before, notice the clothing in the buildings. There's a huge change even if it's not super obvious. Moving on to level 3, and life could not be better, guys. We're making around $16 a day, which makes a tremendous difference. We finally have some reliable infrastructure. We have reliable electricity and we have reliable water in our homes. So now we don't have to waste time going back and forth from some sort of water source, and we can store our food effectively in a freezer, for example, and prevent it from going bad easily. Also, we now have enough money to actually buy meats and varieties of food that we thought were highly luxurious before and inaccessible. Not only that, but affording something like a simple moped or a motorcycle greatly increases our transportation power and allows us to go through large distances so much easier. You can get places so much faster and more efficiently than ever before. That boost in transportation actually makes it possible to take something like a mini vacation where you can go to the next town over on your motorcycle, for example, and see what life is like over there. This is the first time on our list that we've been able to do anything like that. In terms of quality of life, our house is significantly more refined. We now have the ability to have our own individual rooms within our house, which, by the way, cuts down on infection rates between families because now you can quarantine people in a room if they get sick. Entertainment is also more accessible than ever before because remember, we have electricity, which means we can use laptops and we can use cell phones reliably. There is also internet, though at this stage the internet is not as reliable, so you won't see anyone watching something on Netflix, for example. But you can now use the internet for very small tasks like email and gathering information on the internet through forums, and that can be vastly helpful. Overall though, level 3 is a huge step up from level 2 because we have our basics met. We have reliable running water in our homes, reliable electricity. We have our bare essentials covered in a way that was not covered in level 2. And we can actually think about having luxuries, such as going on a mini vacation. I mean, it's nothing crazy like going to Disney World, for example, but it's still something that enhances that quality of life. Here are some pictures from level 3 communities. And you should have noticed by now that even countries like the US can show up here, because even though the US is the wealthiest nation in the world, this does not mean that every part of the US is equally wealthy. Finally, we get to level 4, and this is what those of us in the United States are used to seeing. You are at this level if you make more than $32 every day. That amounts to $12,000 a year. Those of us in this exclusive group make up 1 billion people, or 1/7 of the world population. This level of income means that traveling is really quite accessible to you. You can also have very reliable utilities like water, electricity, internet, and things like that. And you can afford a car, which is huge, by the way. Healthcare is also widely accessible in these communities because you likely have many hospitals or pharmacies nearby, and if you don't, you can probably use a car to get to one without really worrying about having to bicycle or walk the entire way there. Consider also that we have hot and cold water in our house, which is a very rare thing for the other 3 levels of income. The biggest difference though is that we sort of transition from this survivor mentality to a consumer mentality, because now we finally have some excess capital to spend on things we enjoy and things we like, as opposed to the other groups which largely can't spend their money on these things. To drive this point home that we've transitioned from a survivor mindset to a consumer mindset, think about what an extra $3 a day would do for you. It's not going to be life-changing by any means, but for someone in level 1, for example, that might be life or death, those extra $3. Here's some pictures of level 4 communities, though I'm pretty sure you know what they look like, considering you likely live in a level 4 yourself. Now, I didn't make this video just so that you could look at levels 1, 2, 3 and think, wow, I'm so grateful. I live in a level 4 community. It must be terrible to live in a level 1, 2, 3. Not at all. Actually, I've been to parts of my home country of Cuba that are somewhere between a level 2 and a level 3, and I can tell you firsthand, people in those communities laugh just as much as we do. And honestly, some of them seem to be happier than a lot of people here, which is surprisingly seeing what we have and what they don't, but it's the truth. Maybe it's because they lead simpler lives and they don't have the constant hustle and complexity that we have over here sometimes. But regardless, I made this video to see if I could try to spark your interest in the world outside of our level 4 bubble, because personally I found this perspective to be very powerful myself. After learning more about the world like this and experiencing other countries like this firsthand, it's kind of hard to not look at the things we worry about on a constant day-to-day as kind of petty sometimes. Like, I'm guilty of this too, but sometimes it's just so easy to lose yourself wanting that new car or new Gucci bag or the new iPhone, for example, that you lose the difference between something that is a luxury and something that is a necessity. And the thing is, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of us level 4s have a lot of trouble with things like credit card debt or car payments on cars that we can't afford or a mortgage that we can't afford. Even though we're the highest earning income group, we're the top 1/7 of the entire world, we have trouble with things like this. So I guess my message is to think about whether the financial stress of some things is really worth it to you when it comes to things that other groups would consider a huge unnecessary luxury. Now, to be very clear, I'm not saying there's no room to spoil yourself because, I mean, right? I'm just asking you to consider what really brings value to you and what does not. For example, with me, I used to buy a lot of video games on Steam sales thinking, oh, maybe one day I'll play that game. No, I never touched them. There's a lot of games in my library that I have not even opened that I bought, which sounds kind of stupid, but it's happened. And I can bet you it's the same with a lot of other people who play video games out there. Like, imagine telling someone in a level 1 community, oh, I bought this game for $5. I never even touched it. Not a great look, right? That's why in recent years, my mentality has shifted to have that income of a level 4 consumer with the mentality of a level 1 or level 2 survivor. Because in that level of financial minimalism, it really makes you ask yourself if what you're buying is bringing you value or if you're just spending because you can. And by the way, shout out to Graham for promoting that term, financial minimalism. He makes great content if you guys haven't checked him out already. Anyways, guys, to wrap things up, Dr. Rosling in his book actually continues to say that a lot of communities are moving from level 1 and 2 to level 3 and 4 very gradually but progressively, which is super nice. Also, notice I've never used the word country to describe the different levels. That's because, for example, in the United States, even though we're the richest country in the world, like I said before, there might be level 3 or even lower communities somewhere around the United States. Because levels are not country exclusive, and while that idea might be very basic, I found it to be very enlightening. I'll put the link in the description for Dr. Rosling's book, and no, I'm not making any money off of this, I just genuinely think everyone should read it at least once in their lives. And by the way, so does Bill Gates. As always, make sure to hit that like button to support this video, I very much appreciate it. Make sure to get subscribed for more content, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.